Hello, welcome to this episode. We'll have several during the month of April of Occupy Reports. I am Ann and this is Lucy. We're from Occupy, and this is candidate Scott Donaldson for the 11th District of North Carolina, representative to the United States Congress, and we're very happy to have you here today. Thank you.
Thank you. It's very nice to be here.
For showing up. And we've listed out these questions, which we've asked the other candidates. We're going to ask you them also. Are you ready?
I am ready.
How do we start? The first one would be about Medicare. I would like to know, how do we get from here to there with Medicare, single payer, whatever you want to call it, universal health care? I understand that most of the people in our country that have participated in the polls want something like that, but if you just go zip, we're going to do it, then what happens to, the pharmaceutical industry, the insurance industry? That's a big deal.
Right. So, well, many people say that we have a broken healthcare system, and I tend to politely disagree and say, if you say your system is broken, you assume that you have a system. We don't have a healthcare system. We have a get what you can. It's very hodgepodge. It's not like England, which the great Winston Churchill said at the end of World War II, let's make a system that covers all of our people from the time they're born, from the cradle till they breathe their last breath. We don't have that. We've got just an overlapping system that leaves many people out. And so Medicare is one of our great institutions in this nation. We should be proud of it. We have lost pride in our federal institutions, which serve us well. Medicare is a great model for the world for our method of distributing health care. It only uses maybe 3 or 4% overhead. Now, President Obama wanted essentially H.R. 676. Mr. Siegel, who wrote it, who lives in Charlotte, they knew they couldn't get single-payer system on the first pass of this. So they went to what we have end up calling Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, which is kind of an expansion of our hodgepodge system, trying to get all these little folks, all these people who are uncovered. But the problem is, with our system, when you get to something like Medicaid, state-by-state choice, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So some states can pick it up, some states don't. And I'll just tell you, because this is my business, some states cover Medicaid better than other states.
Oh, yes.
So Medicaid in Louisiana is profoundly different than Medicaid in, say, Massachusetts.
So you're a physician.
California. So I'm a physician.
Okay.
This is what I do for a living. I like Medicare for all, single-payer system. Every nation in the world that you would visit has a single-payer system, where the government is the single payer. They collect money from the people, and Medicare works because there are rules that we understand as physicians, that we have to play by the rules, and we get paid. One of the interests, let me give you an example of how it works in the money side of it. There was a physician who came up to me after one of these events, and he said he was 65, he's a cardiologist, and just turned 65 when he had symptoms consistent with a stroke. So he goes to the emergency room, and they did essentially a $31,000 workup on him. That was the bill. Medicare came along and said, not so fast. You did things improper. You did them out of order. We'll pay you $2,500. Take it or leave it. So anyone else who would have walked in without insurance would have been stuck with a $31,000 bill forever if you didn't have insurance. If you'd been on your health insurance plan, they've got some kind of negotiated relationship with that hospital. And if you had a $15,000 deductible, you could have been out of pocket $15,000 for that event. But Medicare comes in and says, you're not doing it properly. You should have done it properly, thus we're not going to pay you. And I will tell you that happens in my world as a physician. Mm-hmm. And that's why we have people who are overseeing and watching and saying, really, you shouldn't do this test. They're not going to pay for it. Let's do it a different way. And that's what Medicare gets to. Mm-hmm. And do not think that it would be without disruption to this medical industrial complex is not going to go quietly into the night.
No kidding.
But this is about we the people. This is not about these publicly traded companies. It's about we the people. And HR 676 actually has a couple components in it. One is that the stock bearers who own these stocks will be bought out at some negotiated price. Secondly, that many of these executives and people who work in not just the executives, but people who work in these industries will have money for job training.
Industries, you mean pharmaceutical industry, insurance industry?
Pharmaceuticals not going to go away. There are European pharmaceutical companies. Well, it'll be different. There are European pharmaceutical companies, and there's many who say that the free market will go away, and that we won't have the research we have now.
I disagree.
Well, I will tell you that my literature, which comes to me every month, American Urologic Association Journal, it's about 1.5 inches thick. Half of those articles are from countries other than the United States of America. So the research still goes on, the drug innovation still goes on, the profiteering, like with Purdue Pharmaceuticals, that has us all poisoned.
Profiteering.
So Purdue Pharmaceuticals, they gave us OxyContin, which gave us this opioid epidemic. Those folks that own it's privately held company, the family is richer than the Rockefellers. Top 10 richest families in the country.
Sure they are.
That goes away. And the insurance companies will not go away completely because there's $3.5 trillion, $3.5 trillion in the American healthcare industry. And so Medicare will need these companies to pass money and move things through. Like maybe some of you all have Medicare Advantage plans. Okay, those are administered. We call it, that's Medicare money administered by a third party, like say Humana or Blue Cross or whoever. But as you know it, buying it off the street month to month, preconditioned, all that nonsense goes away, and we the people, the general good, which is all of us, is the outcome, not shareholders of companies.
So what would you say to somebody who says they're going to pull the plug on grandma? The national government, the federal government is going to say when my grandma gets to die.
Like kind of like the Obama death panels.
Yeah.
Which I tell everyone, I have applied for that job, and I have not heard back yet from them, because there are some people who I would like to. No one in this room. That what you're doing is you are dismissing the soul, the goodwill, and the American healthcare professionals, the physicians and the nurses who take care of these folks.
Yes,
Do you think we're going to allow that to happen? You're out of your mind. We'll be in the streets protesting.
I agree with you. I agree with you that does dismiss the soul of the healthcare professionals who want the good of the people. But there are instances where that soul is constrained by national level laws that don't allow healthcare to be given that's needed.
Well, in my 20, almost 30 years of doing this, I've never seen anything like that. I would say there are things we don't do well. We don't do end of life well. People will spend 95% of the healthcare dollar in the last 6 months of your life.
Exactly.
That's not a government thing. For
It's
me,
not?
No, it's a physician
Oh,
thing.
well, please enlighten me.
It's a physician thing.
I'm learning something here.
Yeah, so if you spend 95% of the healthcare dollar in the last 6 months of your life, that has nothing to do with the government. We're ordering the tests. We're doing the things to these folks who we know are not going to survive as physicians.
Right, because you have to, because it's government mandated.
No,
I thought.
No, it's not. It's not government
That's
mandated.
great.
Individuals need to take charge of their end of life wishes.
Exactly. So people say. So people say, well, I've got a living will and I've got all this stuff sorted out. If you don't communicate with your family members and tell them precisely what your intentions are, including the son or daughter you don't talk to because you don't get along with them,
That one, yeah.
that one will give you trouble. That one will keep you on that ventilator.
Yeah.
You know, that one will ensure that some surgery or some chemotherapy is given to save mama or daddy, or give them another few months when we, the providers, know, and we'll do what, because we're tied.
Yes.
But as physicians, I will tell you, I went through medical. I didn't learn how to be an end-of-life physician until the last 5 to 7 years, when I took an interest in it and knew I could do it better. And we're getting better, but hospice and end-of-life and these conversations, particularly in the South, I'm a Southerner, I'm a Southern evangelical origin. we don't do well. They all want to go to heaven, but they don't want to go today. But beginning to have that conversation is an important thing, and it's we're way off topic here, America. I'm sorry, but what we say is that the components of the end of life should have America. That the end of life should have components of the beginning of life. Joy, celebration, family, happiness. All of these things should be brought because it is a part of this cycle of living.
And that would be furthered by Medicare for All, and how?
Well, that's a great question. Because the Obama death panels were twisted around by some very narrow-minded people to say in the Affordable Care Act there were provisions where you could have end-of-life discussions. This body's given up on me. What do I do? What do I expect? That encounter doesn't have a code until the Affordable Care Act came along.
I see. I see what you're saying. So it was misinterpreted.
And it's also
On
leadership.
purpose.
On purpose. Absolutely. And I think it goes to what I'm really interested in also with leadership, that we need to see leadership in the healthcare educational community, which in my mind, Congress gives me that position to where I can say, no, you need to teach these people how to have this. We're adults. We're adults. Let's have these. And the Affordable Care Act allows for that. And when you get to these Medicare for All, it gets to be broader. And we will be in a single-payer system in the United States of America. There is no, it's inevitable. The question is it going to be, it's going to be disruptive. Is it going to be, you're going to wait for it to collapse and be super disruptive? Or are you going to try to put together an organized, stepwise pathway to get there?
All right, you've
So
answered
that answers, that's probably where time is up here, America.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Really, we need to go on to the next question, which has to do with student loan debt. I have friends that are my age, they're in their 60s. They're going to have to work another 15 to 20 years to finish paying off their student loans before they can retire. Now, if you add that into somebody's
When did they get into debt?
Yeah.
When did they go into debt?
getting PhDs so that they could get a better paying job.
Well,
And here they are.
did they get better paying jobs out of
Yes.
that? They did?
These particular friends of mine did, but they have to keep those jobs for another 15 to 20 years in order to pay off their student loans. Those just some personal examples. And I know young people who are, we're thinking, I won't go to college because I don't want to go into debt. And then there's others who saying, I can't wait for them to bankrupt student loan debt so that I can take a big loan and go to college and then bankrupt. So they're gaming it. So what?
Right. It's both sides, isn't it?
Yeah, both sides.
Well, I would hope that adults, 50 years old, 54, tender age, I wouldn't go into big debt for education at this age unless I knew that degree would pay me back in a very short period of time. Because I know that this body's going to play out and it's going to only work so well, my earning power is only so good.
But
So
you're pretty smart there.
There is some, well, I think most of us as we get to our 50s get a little more savvy. And we should know that, big debt, very long-term debt, I tell my wife all the time, let's make it, let's try to get all of our debts discharged by age of 65. So no long debts as I get into my 60s. It's just not, it's not a good idea. So there is some responsibility that's there that, graduate education should pay for itself in a reasonable amount of time. I'm more concerned really about the younger kids who get into massive educational debt. And we have doctors in this world that are $300,000, $350,000 in debt now, and let's set them aside for a while because they have better earning capacity. But if you're $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 in debt and you're making $30,000 a year, I mean, or less, right? And the problem is those kids is they don't know any better. Let's say they love art, and they want to study art, or they love anthropology. And some of these things are just enthralling. They just suck you in. Or they want to be an English major. And we know as adults, but how do you tell your kid, don't study that. Don't go into debt for that. So I think that those are the people I'm most concerned about protecting, because they just don't know about it. They don't know about it. They're naive. And a lot of these debts are from these private online institutions. And then those degrees are not backfilled by job. Well, I went to NC State.
Yeah.
And the degrees at NC State are backfilled very heavily by relationships that will get you a job.
With industry, yeah.
These online institutions are one of my biggest agitations. They do not backfill these things with relationships. They indebt people with false promises they can't keep, by and large. Certainly there's some success stories because you see them on TV, but by and large, thousands of diplomas, tens of thousands in debt, and I'm not sure we're getting where we need to be.
So would you sign on with H3 2366?
Yes, I think you ought to be able to discharge some of these debts. Absolutely.
Okay, let's move on.
I'm getting carried away.
It's easy to do. The topics are so overarching, and they're just really important, all of them, every single one of them. The next one has to do with the Gabbard's-Off Act, which is to end America's reliance on fossil fuels, and that's another one of those incredibly huge topics.
We need to get off fossil fuels. We're sending our treasury of this nation and our young children overseas to defend the gathering of oil, in particular to push these cars around, which we drove up here in a car, and our way of life is right now.
Because we don't have any choice.
Right. And it's heavily subsidized by the government. Don't let them kid you. The Army, the Army and the Navy and the Air Force and the Marines all subsidize fossil fuels, particularly, the overseas. They've also subsidized the cleanup of the coal when we have massive problems. So that it makes sense we can begin to subsidize alternative forms of power. We have to have power. That's what makes everything go. If you've ever been in a nation that does not have reliable power, Nigeria and Haiti and some of these other places I've visited, it's what sets us apart.
And now Puerto Rico.
So we don't know what's out there on the alternative energy side because we haven't given it the moonshot, the Marshall Plan energy that we've given these fossil fuels. And it's unknown what we can do. So yes, we have to get off fossil fuels.
So that brings me to election reform. From my perspective, all of this,
I was going to
these
say,
problems
what you're talking
are
about
caused by-
is how come they're always subsidizing these other things. And we're going to talk about what election reform.
Take it away, Lucy.
If you were elected to Congress,
Yes, ma'am.
how will you join on with HJR 48?
This is the one that takes away, that says, HRJ 48 says that corporations are not people, that
That's
people are
exactly
people.
right.
And that
No.
money is not free speech.
And there are
Money is
54
not free
congressmen
speech.
right now who have signed on, 2 from North Carolina.
You gotta be happy to sign on to that one. It's really interesting. So, we think that it is that there are a problem now, Citizens United among others. Really the problem is the gerrymandering. But we got gerrymandering because of Citizens United. They're the ones that dumped all that money in these races that got these folks elected and
That's
then
true.
redrew the lines.
That's true.
And so once these lines get redrawn, which they will be, and it's going to take a while, their voice is going to go down, is going to become more silent through that. But I am all for this bill. People are people. People bleed. Corporations do not bleed.
That's right. And corporations have a lot of human rights right now, besides their free speech for elections.
Right. That's right. But if you don't have a pulse,
But
you
you
don't
would join
breathe,
on.
you're not a person.
That's
yes.
right. All right. There are several other election-related questions.
Uh-huh.
And one thing we wanted you to talk about was what would you do if large corporations offer you campaign finances?
I think if large corporations meet my the values that I have in general, yes, I'm going to take their money. If they do not, the Koch brothers, they don't even need to come calling. Let's not kid ourselves. We're up against, it'll be in the millions by the time Mr. Meadows will raise $1 million. And it's very difficult to get $1 million from $100 a donation. So we're going to have to match him to be able to communicate. This is not evil money in my mind. Evil money is from places like Citizens United or these other Koch brothers who have their own interests in mind. But there are other PACs that are very progressive.
And all the fossil fuel people are going to have given money to all of our current representatives.
Right. So I'm not looking for. I'm not interested in their money.
Okay.
But if they share my values, then yes, I'm not. I don't think that money's in my mind. That money's not evil until these rules get changed. Then no one has access to them. Then I'm all for that.
Yeah.
By the rules are here. We're going to play by the rules.
And I don't know what other kind of corporations might be offering you money, but after you were elected, they would expect you to vote on whatever they wanted you to vote on, so they would give you money to be reelected.
Just like the drug companies who give me pens doesn't mean that I'm going to write their drug. I'll take their pen. I'm not writing their drug. And I think, you can give your money all you want, but that doesn't mean you're buying me.
Right. You believe you could remain a free agent.
I've been doing it for a long time in this medical world without any level of I don't feel any duplicity. I don't think I've been hypocritical in my use or non-use of these drugs.
That's a clear answer.
It is. All right, Scott. Suppose there is proven evidence of election fraud, and I don't mean voter fraud. That's what they always say is the reason for taking away the voters' rights.
The way the votes are counted, not the way they're cast, not the way they're counted.
Election fraud.
You mean like at the election county level, or whoever's the voter election, the board?
Like they have shut down a lot of the voting sites,
early.
And they have, yeah.
This has been going on since the
What
beginning of time.
would you do if you were just a little behind the other candidate when the results were counted, and you had clear evidence of election fraud? What would you do?
What are the options?
Well, that's what we're asking you, because
there's got to be someone knows something.
Some people have sued.
Yeah, you sue. People have a vote. People have a right to have a vote. And if if you're staying in line and they say we're closing at 6, well, they had an obligation to keep these voting booths open.
That's right.
People have been, I spent a lot of time in New Orleans, 6 years of my residency, and they had old Huey Long had the voter fraud's been going on forever in various forms. I think it's our election fraud. I think it's our obligation to ensure that
So, what would you do? Would you sue, or would you just say, "Gosh, that's awful"?
Yeah, it's going to be an after-the-fact event, right?
Exactly.
So, I think we need to continue to make rules and laws to ensure that everyone has equal access. What can you do in the moment? I can't sue in the moment and keep these things open. You'll never get through that.
A recount, I guess, would be.
Well, no, because you're saying people that couldn't vote. Could you?
No,
then you'd
no,
be
no, I'm talking
after
about
the election.
after
Would you
when
demand a recount or sue?
That there has been that the votes have been counted incorrectly.
Well, sure. People have a right to be heard. The voters have a
So
right
you
to be
would
heard.
sue if you thought they had been counted incorrectly and you were close and you might have won if it had been counted correctly.
Well, I think you do it right if it's.
So you would pursue.
Whether we win or lose, I mean, that's important. The more important thing is that the people have the right to vote. They want to vote that their votes are properly counted.
Exactly.
It's less about who wins. It's more about the people who
Oh,
are
I
hurt.
know that. But see, the reason this question was selected is because a lot of candidates that I supported in the past lost when there was suspicion of election fraud, and they did not pursue anything in terms of.
Well, I mean, this maybe
it.
puts me in a funny place with y'all, but
Of course it does.
we know Gore v. Bush. Okay, Al Gore initially said we're only going to count them in Broward County, Dade County, and these 3 counties where I have the best chance of winning. I didn't think that was proper. I thought, no. You count all of them if they're all in question.
But I didn't
they
see
all had to be
Gore
counted.
pursue that. And I didn't see Sanders pursue loss to Clinton. And I didn't see.
Gore v. Gore. There was a movie made
Gore v.
about
Bush. Yeah, I know there was a movie made about it.
My patient was in the movie. No.
But he didn't pursue legal anything. Well, anyway, you've answered the question, and I.
Yeah, people have a right to be heard. Period. And how you get to there.
What would you say? I'm sorry, it was your question.
I have another
when
question.
it's her turn to ask
I have
questions.
another
Yes.
question.
Yeah.
Would you talk about what you think of the concept of ranked choice voting?
Yeah, let's just clarify what that means. And that is you rank 1 to 5, for instance, the people that you like, that you want to vote for. And that's my vote. Now, as they tabulate them, the lowest gets thrown off, so you're narrowing down. You're trying to avoid a runoff, so you're trying to get 1 vote to give the answer based on these rankings, variable rankings. My residency selection was like that. I ranked 1 to 5 where I wanted to go as a resident after medical school, and the places I interviewed ranked 1 to 5. Now, my only really concern in that is it gets kind of confusing. And there are large groups of our population who would have a hard time with this. I think no one in this room will have a hard time with it. But did you ever see how those butterfly ballots in Florida were actually cast? And the terrible trouble people had with those? Some of them were circling things. Some of them were clicking them all out.
Oh, yes.
I mean, there was a lot of confusion in that. And you guys are very educated people, and these progressives are very, very smart people. But we have an and we need to work on this. We have a huge education gap.
We'd have to have an education before we voted like that.
You have to have a massive education. I got people who I know very well are saying, "I didn't know you were running for anything." Right now, today they're telling me that because they're not engaged. They're not looking at the the newspaper. They're just living their lives. And so, if you make a major change to this voting, I mean, I don't know if you know Eastern North Carolina, east of I-95, where I went to medical school, down 60% of the people read at a 4th grade level.
Morehead City, yeah.
Well, Morehead City's fine. Beaufort, Washington, Bertie County, Elizabeth City. So those people, 60% live at a 5th grade level, read at a 5th grade level. So explaining to these folks who are desperately poor, and not very well educated, not as literate, this very complex voting parameter, I think, wow, it's a great idea. I'm for it.
You do think it's a great idea, and you are for it.
However, your implementation is a bit, I think, could be very difficult. You have a lot of people who are very confused.
I would like to go back to where I started with you on HJR 48. Do you know, watching today, that in North Carolina we have a ballot for the people of North Carolina to vote on the fact that corporations are not people and their money is not free speech. And you will have a chance if you would go to ncwethepeople.org and sign the petition, and then go over to where it says send a message, and that's a message to the Rules Committee, who are holding legislation that has already been introduced. And if we can get it out of the Rules Committee, if you will go to ncwethepeople.org and
send a message
to the Rules Committee.
Both
it just takes one click. Goes to every single member of the Rules Committee. Tell them to get that out so that we can get the Congress, the General Assembly in North Carolina, to vote to put it on the ballot in the November 2018 election. We can vote on that in North Carolina this year, and we've never had that chance before.
If you don't bleed, you're not a person.
That's right. That's right.
Oh,
and lots of other things.
Well, do you have anything that you want to say in about 30 seconds?
This is a really cool place to have an interview.
I think it is, and since you're here, I hope you win since you want to. And
are you trying to buy my vote? Is that what you're trying to buy my blessings now? If I get elected, you want me to do things for you? Saying nice things.
We're not going to give you any money.
You're not going to give me any money. She's just giving me nice things. She's just saying nice things. That's going to be a form of bribery.
Listen, I tell you what, I'm not telling you who I'm voting for because I haven't decided.
There you go.
But you've helped make an impression on Ann and all of us who were watching today and in this room.
Yes.
Well, that's the part
about whether or not to vote for you.
Well, that's part of it being. That's the deal about being part of the process. You're pushing the conversation forward. We're making a difference somewhere down the line.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you,
Scott.
Everybody. Thank you, Lucy. Thank you, Scott. Thanks for being on Occupy Reports today. And thank you, everybody, for listening. It's been great. Bye.